So hello, everybody. Let me just share this just for the sake of a little bit of more organization. So can everybody see the screen? Can everybody hear me all right? Okay.
Yes,
So
perfect.
on this session, we will be talking about a strategic aspect of temporary uses, which is the element of flexibility in nomadic approaches and how these approaches, in the case of Manifattura Tabacchi and La Friche Belle de Mai, are driven by culture and creativity. So the stories we're about to hear are really quite exciting, and I'm very, very, very interested in hearing your thoughts and leading this conversation. We will talk about stories where we have developer-driven design of meanwhile uses in the case of Manifattura Tabacchi, and then in the case of La Friche, we will hear about the conception of a permanent meanwhile. So without further ado, let me just introduce to you your panelists, which are Riccardo Luciani from Made in Manifattura, who is the director of this company that has taken care of the design and implementation of the meanwhile uses in the regeneration site of Manifattura Tabacchi. And then Eva Riccio, who is the coordinator of the T-Factor project and project officer at La Friche Belle de Mai. So I will keep it brief, and the floor is all yours, Riccardo.
Thank you,
Let
Alejandra, and
me,
thank
let
you.
me,
Yeah,
yes, here you go.
I'll start with the presentation as soon as the tools allow me. No, I'm really happy to be here and to start like telling the story of Manifattura so far. It's not easy because a lot have been said now by Ramon and Laura, and I think that they really did an amazing job. All the team in T-Factor did an amazing job with the paper, the work, and it's really important for us as practitioners to really step out for a second and see all the processes from a different angle, and this part of the reflection is really a key. So I'll try to add something if I can. So the story I'm telling you is about the meanwhile uses in Manifattura Tabacchi, and this is the way in which they were conceived. So the Manifattura Tabacchi from 2018 to 2021-22 really approached his presence in the city of Florence as a consciousness, as a conscious meanwhile use. The idea is that Manifattura Tabacchi, for who is not like I mean, if you don't know, Manifattura Tabacchi is an ex-industrial site, so it was the tobacco manufacturing facility in Florence. It was built in around 1930s. Is a masterpiece of Russian architecture, a really beautiful place that was shut down in 2001. From 2001 to 2016, a lot of really ugly projects were risen by the city or the different developers. Most of them were looking at Manifattura Tabacchi as a site that should be really dismantled. And we are lucky because in 2016 a new kind of project, a new kind of approach rises, and an investment fund, �RMONT, an English investment funds, and Cassa Depositi e Prestiti, which is the Italian real estate, the Italian state, let's say, investment fund again, found a way of collaborating and launched this important master plan, which keep the most part of the building in Manifattura Tabacchi. So from this kind of approach, we were asked to design and create a process during the, of course, during the meanwhile time. So during the permissions, master plan approval, and all the preparation for the construction site. Our starting point, of course, was the idea that first of all, of course, we need to bring life into abandoned places, then create space for people to gather, to meet, and to do things, and then we can really open or use the buildings. So we started quite, let's say, fast renovation of some places. This map that you see is a map of like the 13% of the whole area. So we have 100,000 square meters. This is like, I'm zooming in, this is the pictogram of Manifattura Tabacchi. So the black part is the part that we actually start using in during these years, and the approach was a modular approach during the different years, looking at four main pillars. So the first pillar of the design of the meanwhile uses is the community. Community, because the area where Manifattura Tabacchi insists is a lively neighborhood. There's a lot of things running in the neighborhood, even if it's not really, positioned towards this new idea of contemporary hub. So we started working with people, with children, with the neighborhood, of course, not only trying to bring the neighborhood within Manifattura, but also trying to go and reach out and really discover. Four main activity on this side are the social district, which is a training course for all the small shops and small businesses in the neighborhood that we did during the pandemic to help them sell online while the neighborhood was closed as Italy, and that was an important thing we did, because it starts connecting the development site with the neighborhood. The Grand Tour, which is a tour by bike, so you are not going to visit the city center, but to get to know the different neighborhood that are around Manifattura Tabacchi, and it's something we build and develop with the neighborhood itself. And then, of course, we have space for the neighborhood committee and different children activity. The community part is really important, because the meanwhile uses in Manifattura Tabacchi are really community driven, in the sense that every activity and every step we made, we build it with a different community. So it's not a participatory approach, but it's really a community driven approach. The second pillar is the green part. So we started, of course, building, our urban garden, but we did a little bit more. So this is a picture of the air factory. Is a concept developed by Stefano Mancuso, the biologist. This is a way that we are using to clean the air within the closed space of the co-working area and the restaurant. So it's a tool, it's a machine that uses the plant ability to clean the air to really clean the environment within the spaces. And we really did a lot of events and related activities to this relationship with the environment and the ability of the plants to teach us how to behave and how to transform. So and this is really something that also deals with the landscape master plan of Manifattura Tabacchi and the way in which it connects to the Cascine Park, which is the largest park in Florence that is connected to Manifattura Tabacchi. And then, of course, two different pillars, which are fashion and then art, just to understand that this idea of contemporary place, so a new contemporary center for a city, which is beautiful and which is kind of stuck into the idea of Renaissance and the idea of fashion in Italy at the beginning of the 19th century. This is really important because we're really trying to engage the city and the different stakeholders in the city to try to really push a little bit forward the conversation on different topics. So fashion is one, and the other one, of course, is art and contemporary art. I'll go a little bit deeper in the next slides. 2018, Made in Manifattura was the idea of using these spaces as they were. 2019, it was much more about inhabiting the space. So we created this concept space benign that I'll show you in a while. 2020, it was much more about contemporary art. So we created this concept of not a museum, so a museum that doesn't need to have a collection or doesn't need to have a space, but is actually a community of practice. And then now we are working towards the transition. So how do we transition from meanwhile and temporary to the permanent manifattura? So as I was saying, Made in Manifattura was something much more community-led. It was much more, let's say, colorful, and it was that specific time where Manifattura opened its doors for the first time, because before 2001, Manifattura Tabacchi was a tobacco factory, so it wasn't a public space. It wasn't a space where people can come along and see things. So the very first moment, and a special moment also because Manifattura, the construction site was not started yet. So it was a specific occasion where you can visit the whole area. And it was really special because people for the first time gather within Manifattura, and we engaged the former tobacco workers and their families to really join us and tell us the story of how the factory worked. And the funny thing is that they never stressed about how did they make tobacco, but how much they were enjoying staying together with the bicycle, with the beautiful dinners and the theater and all the activities that now we were actually restarting. So that was 2018. 2019, we decided that a space should be built in order to be present in Manifattura Tabacchi every day with different people. So we gathered a community. We gathered a community of we call them makers. So they are hat makers and artisans from Florence, building a space that had different ateliers, workshops, co-working space, a bookshop, bistro, brewery, and different kind of amenities, which is quite common. But I think we created it in a special way, anchoring the the art of making not only to things, but also extending it like beyond. And then in 2020, which is yes, a year which is different from the others for many reasons. We started with this concept of not a museum. The important thing is that the 2020 was the year of the pandemic, but we didn't, I mean, not a museum didn't really, it wasn't really a problem, because we spent the first part of the year building a community, and the online part really helped us a lot in building this community. I mean, really trying to make sense out of the situation. And we were able, even if of the pandemic, to do a lot of things and exhibitions. And there's the 𝐝𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸 works from Saraceno. We did really a lot of things, and I think there's no time to mention them. So we were able to engage with a lot of people. We have almost, yes, 260 visitors within the first part of the program, and then we have 150 regular visitors. 150,000 regular visitors per year in the following years. During the meanwhile, intended as a cultural and artistic program, we were able to also to attract temporary tenants. So those tenants that are really in between from the meanwhile and the permanent part of Manifattura, which is Accademia di Belle Arti, so the fine art institution in Florence, Dogged Animation, which is a 2D studio. They make films and graphic cartoons, and 𝐼𝐸𝐸𝐻𝐿, and also Polimoda took the very first building, which has been restored during the meanwhile. So within the different squares and spaces we use, there was this building that was really refurbished during these 4 years. And as January 2020, the Polimoda students start to come and join Manifattura, which is again something really important, also to see how the mixes and the different prototypes that we built are really usable for a great amount of people, also on a daily basis. So from temporary to permanent, I'm coming to an end. I just completely lost the perception of time, I'm sorry. What's next? Now we have a construction site. So the bottom right part of Manifattura is the one that we are now using for a meanwhile. And now this blue area at the very center is the so-called factory, which is the space that now is under construction. And it will be the space where all the meanwhile and temporary functions are going to converge. So there will be, of course, not a museum as a space, not only as a community. There will be creative spaces, maker spaces, co-working spaces, this huge garden at the center of the space, and of course the school. So this is kind of a way to explain also the approach and the transition between the temporary and the meanwhile uses in Manifattura Tabacchi. So the prototype is ending, and now we are transitioning to the permanent setup. This is kind of a timeline of the Manifattura, so there's a lot of work to do, and a lot of buildings are going to show up in the next years. But now we are focusing on this central area. Just to give you a sense, the Manifattura is, of course, it's 16 buildings, so it's 100,000 square meters. It's quite a big but not huge area. So just to cut it short, what did we learn and what is the approach we took? So there are a few assumptions. So the first thing is that the activation, the uses need to start with the construction site. So there's no way that we start after the construction site ended, but this is something you of course learn. Our approach, it was about meanwhile uses as a prototype. So we try to mirror the district master plan in its mood, pillars, target, cultural program, everything. So it was an actual prototype of the future. We followed a declining cost approach. So from full cost coverage by the developer to self-sustainability. This is the idea of the approach, and the philosophy is also that from a top-down broadcast selection of the content, so the city comes in because we are doing something, to a bottom-up engagement. So we already engage the city is in, and so we are no longer cultural promoters. So we let the city express itself within the culture and the artistic program. So we're no longer programming it from top down, but trying to let things emerge from the community we have created. This is a bit of a framework that we used since the beginning. So on the horizontal axis, we have the approaches that we use to build the activities and the relationship with the context. Then a written reflection on the space's activation. So where should we be and what kind of relationship do we have with the space itself? And then the relationship with the building site. We just added this terminology. So we called it the meanwhile. For us, it was the time where nothing else was there. So it was just us and the activities. The temporary is the phase where some final and tenancy is already there, and some function already distillated. I mean, they already final somehow, but the meanwhile continue to exist. And then the final thing. So just not to take too much time, just one important thing on this drawing is about the legacy building. So the part on the top right, where do all the energy and all the learnings and all the community building and all the programs that happen during the meanwhile should converge? There is a need of a space, not in terms of square meters, but in terms of importance and definitive final use, which needs to harvest the legacy and all the effort that has been made. So there is this triangle for us. It's something that has within itself the ownership of the identity of the place, the awareness in terms of the importance that this process has within those years, and the advocacy part. So it's the legacy is kind of the place where everything converges from an immaterial point of view, and try to keep it on the long distance. So as the meanwhile never ends in terms of vision of the place. Just this is yes, don't look at the numbers because it's just a drawing. So but the idea is that the expenses are really higher than the revenues in the first part of the project, and then the expenses are declining. And if we look the project on a 10-year basis, it's just a zero sum. Let's say it's quite even in terms of revenues and expenses, and this is something important because it's not just about how much much important is minimal uses for the positioning, marketing, or community building, but it's also about, are those minimal uses sustainable for themselves? And the answer, we think that is yes. It just depends on how much time do you have to measure it. So if you are going to build something for us within the meanwhile phase, you engage the local community and showcase the local talent. You sustain the local part to enhance their reach. So you are there, but you are an enhancer of their ability and capacity. And you start working a lot on the identity and the, as I was saying, community building of the space. That comes to, I mean, a strong interaction with the local community, approaching partners on a urban scale, and start doing an international tenant selection. And this framework goes to the temporary, and the difference between meanwhile and temporary is mainly that you start scaling up. So it's not only about local activities or local talent, but you start attracting also talent on an urban or a national or international scale, because it's not just about identity and community building, but it's about positioning the whole site. And you start putting tenants within the project. And then at the end of the minimal uses, you need to start selling something, so to rent or sell something, to create a place actually for people to live in. And on this could be something you do on a urban or a local or a national or international level. So this is mainly the experience we had. I don't know if I talk too much or too less. Please, Alejandra, can you give me a feedback, because I completely lost.
It was a wonderful presentation. Thank you, Riccardo. It was really, really wonderful, and it's really interesting to hear all these experiences. I would quickly, I know that we have a few questions for you, but if it's all right, I would quickly leave the floor to Eva so she can present her story, and then we can come back and have a nice conversation, all of us. So Eva, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I will share my screen too. Just a second. Here. So, I will start with a little bit of context for those who are not knowing very well La Friche Belle de Mai. So La Friche Belle de Mai is in France, in Marseille. As you can see here, it is just near the rail tracks in the city of Marseille. La Friche Belle de Mai is the site that you can see here in yellow today. But before the 90s, it was the whole colored space in the neighborhood, and a former tobacco factory as Manifattura Tabacchi in Florence. It was holding the second main factory of cigarettes in France. So really, really important since the mid 19th century. Now it is really fragmented in the space because in the beginning, when the factory closed in the 90s because of industrialization and different laws against tobacco consumption, the city of Marseille became the owner of the site after the 𝐶𝐸𝐻 owner, the factory, and decided to give artists and from visual arts and theater, performance arts, the whole space, and with a conception of nomadism in the space. So artists had the free, had the keys to really explore all the space and understand where they can maybe settle, but the idea of settlement at this moment is really not present. It was really an experimental way of working to explore all the space, find new ways of showing arts, but also creates arts. In the 90s began the first transformation. What you can see here on those pictures are the transformation made in the 2000, because we can see that in this presentation, I will show you the concept of permanent meanwhile, but the permanent meanwhile has different dynamics depending of jurisdiction and administrative dynamics. Every steps has a different speed, let's say, of transformation. What we can understand and remember is that when artists, designers, producers, cultural producers came in La Friche, they came and explored the sites with tobacco leaves on the floor. Some people, elders, are saying today that they can smell still the smell of tobacco in this space, you know. So it was not transformed for welcoming artists, but the artists step by step in 30 years of experience transformed the space. What you can see here is an image of La Friche today. So we will have next year 30 years of experience, driven by an experimentation methodologies, in the sense that in La Friche we can speak about artistic hypothesis and tests, experimentation, and then results and ideas, positive and negative results, depending of the artistic hypotheses that have been made. These tests have driven the master plans that have been written during the years. What we can understand as Manifattura Tabacchi is that the master plan is not the framework of what have been tested, but it is the other way around. The tests are driven by freedom, and depending of what have been made and what the collective results is creating, there have been some choices made. What you can already see in this picture is that architecture is really important in La Friche, because it has been driven also by the uses, by watching, observing, testing uses with the artists first, because it was first a working space, and then with the publics. Moreover, since 2013, the buildings that have been created and modified for the uses, and not the way around, for creating using by the buildings. And as a lot of meanwhile space here in Europe today, everything is mutualized. What you can see, the black box in the middle, is, for example, a theater of more than 2 theater space, 5,000 seats, and 500 each. And it is not a theater for one organization. There are more than 70 different organizations in this space, coordinated by the cooperative society, for which I am an employee, for example, and who has the mission to coordinate the building modification, the building plans, and the coordination of artistic and cultural activities on the whole site. Because if everything is mutualized, you have to organize the space and time between people. So what we can say of the grassroots of La Friche is that really the artists and cultural operators are going in this space from 1992 and explore a different way of occupying the space, but also of creation, making a link with the neighborhood, which is still really a permanent will of the local actors, and also exploring really new ways of working within arts and culture. This is modified thanks to reflection about juridic form and administrative form of the organization coordinating the whole space, and also the perimeter, juridic perimeter for having the property and the right of modifying the space. So what we can say is that from 1992 to 2007, the site is coordinated by an association named Système Friche Théâtre, directed by one of the founder, Philippe Foulquier, former founder of a big puppet theater in Marseille, and who founded the Friche Belle de Mai with Alain Fourneau and Julien Blaine, who was the former cultural assessor for the city of Marseille. So La Friche Belle de Mai, what we can remember is that has never been a squat. It has never been an illegal occupation of the space, which was really, really frequent at this time in the 90s. But the occupation is the result of a real friendship between political public will and artists. The juridic forms changed for a cooperative society in 2007 because it was really a mirror of the cooperative dynamic that people wanted to put into the space, but also because it allowed people to have a particular lease with the city, an amphitheatric lease, which is running still now because it's a lease of 45 years, and allow the society, the cooperative society, to modify the space and have some rights as a owner. I will go quickly around the master plans because those master plans are really still in movement. We are currently in 2021 writing the next master plan for the next 15 years in a really cooperative way, learning from all those master plans which have been really created for 2013 when La Friche have been, Marseille have been European Capital of Culture. So everything has been made in La Friche: a circus, rave party, techno party, And 2013 allowed us to have a really big fundings and political willingness within the artists to develop the sites and settle some uses. So the permanent meanwhile uses, the terms of experimentation took another dimension. It does not disappear, but some uses are anyway settling because also of obligation to develop security, legal forms for welcoming the publics, because from 2010 there is a really growth of desire of having more and more publics in the space and make crossovers. So we made music festival, exhibition of contemporary arts, theaters, but also, as you can see in this image, workshops with the families and the children, because there is also a daycare in La Friche. I'm sorry, I think I'm taking too much time, but this is really important for La Friche to understand the permanent meanwhile concept, which is going through all our activities still today. I talk with 𝐮𝐫𝐚𝐬𝐲, who is director of Radio Grenouille, one of the historical organization of La Friche. And he wanted to transmit here that when you think about developing a meanwhile space as La Friche, we are not model, but we hope we can make a reference here thanks to T-Factors and all the research which have been made with Advanced Cases portfolio, which is a great work, is that in our vocabulary, we are really avoiding the concept of aims and objectives, because it is really making a definite perspective in time and space. Because we are in an artistic and cultural driven space, we are using the same vocabulary as artists, which is intention and horizon. So it can give you more freedoms about what you want to create in the future, and avoid the principle of finiteness. But also give you a dynamic which is really different when you are making a really work plan or master plan, as we can imagine in another economic or sector. You are not going straight to the aim by thinking with intention and horizon. You are exploring every way to maybe to keep in perspective all the paths, keeping your horizon in your vision, in your point of view, let's say, but you are not going straight to it, and you are welcoming unexpected encounters, but also tracks, and what we can make as a summary, because cooperative dynamics for meanwhile uses and developing meanwhile space is really important to us, is really cooperation and make some adhesion around you when you are working with the territory, with the neighborhood, with inhabitants, creators, economical actors or social actors. By exploring, you are federating, because you are not in the position of knowing what you are doing, but nourish yourself with experience and skills and from other people that you can meet on your tracks. And you are not choosing the people you want to meet, and so this is nourishing your whole project. you don't have to be afraid to be lost, let's say, in a concept of permanent experimentation, as we can see in La Friche. Also, what I can say is that, yeah, I say already that fixing space is giving us less and less flexibility in exploring meanwhile uses, but it's not disappearing. Still, people have, let's say, imagination in this kind of space. And confronting different dynamics, which is specific to cultural sectors, but also others, such as injunction of political public will, of labelization of spaces, of giving responsibilities to the actors, and then it's not, well, you are still in constant deal, negotiation, let's say. Okay, I will close now because I see we are really out of time. I'm sorry. Just what I wanted to say, which is really important, is just when you are creating adhesion for exploring meanwhile uses and meanwhile space, as you have seen, our lease is 45 years, so you need time perspective, because creating consent, creating collective project is taking time, and you have to sometimes fight against the political calendar or the funding calendar. But yeah, that will be the last point I wanted to say. Take time to explore. Okay, I'm finished. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for sharing this wonderful story with us, Eva. I think we have a couple of minutes for a few questions, so I would open the floor to any questions that there are. And I would like to start with one question posed by Marta Arniani, which is for Riccardo. She asks, how did you manage to create a sense of community online to prepare for Not a Museum? Any suggestions you can share?
Thanks for the question. Sorry, I just lost it. No, I was saying the community for starting the project was a community of 30 people. So it was not a huge community in the sense of, you know, participating or debating. And we usually, when it comes to small communities, we use an hands-on approach. So we focused on doing a project together, and we do this also offline. So building something together is a way of creating this sense of trust and get to know each other, and also to have the satisfaction of, you know, creating something. So we focused on a digital project. So we created a digital project that was an artistic digital project on our website, as many others did during the pandemic. And that was a funding moment. So we just had thousands of talks and meeting online, and people working with us to create something. So that was nothing really special.
Thank you. To the rest of the participants, are there any questions that you would like to ask to either of our panelists? You can either write it on the chat or take the floor if you'd like.
I would have a question, Alejandra, if possible, to both Eva and Riccardo. I mean, in both cases, it's a huge effort, right? Done over years. And could you say something about how you, your core learnings in terms of creating the core team working on this? Because I guess this is quite a critical and important aspect. because I think it requires different competencies and people from different disciplines working together. So how did you manage that aspect?
You go first, Eva.
Well, I think it's really different as an approach depending of the timeline of the project, you know, because first it was really a little community of artists and, let's say, friends who had a common project and the same perspective, you know. Today, coordinating 400 people who are working on the site every day, it's really managing all the things that intentions, actually, for sure. But let's say what is in discussion still today to have an efficient team and keep a common project is to be careful to have as you say, complementary skills, but also complementary experience, in the sense that it is important to keep people who are here since the 90s, and to welcome people as me, who was born in 92. So, you know, you have different perspective and different trainings too, and which is important is to, yes, create complementary teams of backgrounds, of generation, of experience, and also a common perspective of culture and arts in a, we'll say, in a whole conception. For all of us in the team, what we can see is no one is specialized in theater or visual arts or research fundings. Everyone is interested in everything, and transmission between peer to peer is really constant in our teams. I hope I answered to the question.
Thank you, Eva.
But from my perspective, the Friche is huge cultural project. From my perspective, I find useful to always keep in mind that we are dealing with the space, so we need a person which deals with the space, so a location manager, so a person that is able to understand, interact with different contractors, and this is a particular set of skills, and soft and hard, and this is really key, because otherwise you are always, I mean, thinking about the floor or the ceiling or something like this, and not focusing on your objective. So on the other side, I find useful to have a person which is in charge of the community. So it could be internal, it could be the idea of an external community. So a person which is able to engage people and to keep conversation open with the neighborhood. So a person which has a certain set of soft and hard skills that is able to dealing with communities. Otherwise, you are always, during the day, you are always interrupted by someone or something which is important but is not. Communication is key. So there is the need of someone which is keeping their mind on the communication part. So which is digital, physical, which is the art direction. So how does your project looks like, and how people interact with it without, without going deeper in the sense. So communication again is key, and the fourth part is about programming, and so the content. How do we build it? How do we design it? And who is in charge of it? And I find extremely useful to have people that are really, really, really good in a specific topic, or so we have a project manager on contemporary art. We had one in music, and music is not all music. It's electronic music, is folk music, and people need to be really good and maybe the best in doing that, because it's really a key. And then a strong management structure that can intertwine all these four, let's say, different polarities.
Great, thank you, Riccardo. Unfortunately, we don't have more time for questions, but of course, this is an ongoing conversation. And if you have any further questions, I would encourage you to forward them to us, and we can hopefully enable this dialogue. So following up, we will have a 5-minute coffee break, and then we will continue with the next session, if that's all right with you. Thank you, Eva, and thank you, Riccardo, again for sharing these really inspiring experiences, and thank you again.